Ethan met Ophelia on a rain-soaked autumn afternoon in college. He had been late for class, sprinting across campus, when he crashed into her outside the library. Books scattered across the wet pavement, and as he scrambled to pick them up, he found himself staring into the most captivating green eyes he had ever seen. She laughed, brushing her dark hair behind her ear. "Are you always this clumsy?" From that moment on, they were inseparable. Their love was the kind that felt fated, as if the universe had stitched their souls together long before they met. Ethan adored Ophelia, her sharp wit, her quiet fascination with history, and the way she always smelled like lavender and something he couldn't quite name, something old. Years later, they married in a small ceremony under an ancient oak tree. It was the happiest day of Ethan's life. He never noticed how Ophelia whispered something into the wind before they exchanged vows. It wasn't until she became pregnant that strange things started happening. First, it was little things. The way animals recoiled from her. The way she always seemed to know when someone was about to knock before they did. Then there were the dreams. Ethan would wake in a cold sweat, the echoes of whispering voices fading into the dark. "Just dreams," Ophelia would say, stroking his hair. "Everything is fine, my love." But things weren't fine. It started with the mirrors. Sometimes, when Ethan glanced at his reflection, he swore he saw something behind him. A dark figure, just out of focus. But when he turned, nothing was there. Then came the whispers. At night, when the house was silent, he could hear them, soft, murmuring voices just beneath the floorboards, speaking in a language that made his skin crawl. And Ophelia changed, too. Not drastically, but enough that he noticed. She spoke to their unborn child in hushed tones when she thought Ethan wasn't listening. The way she cradled her stomach, it wasn't just motherly. It was reverent, as if she were carrying something divine. One night, he woke up to find her standing over the crib they had set up, her hands hovering in the air, lips moving in silent prayer. The candlelight flickered violently, stretching her shadow unnaturally tall against the walls. "Ophelia?" His voice was barely a breath. She turned slowly, a serene smile on her lips. "Go back to sleep, love." He wanted to believe her, but the next day he started watching her more closely. Then he found the journal. It was hidden beneath the floorboards of her closet. An old, leather-bound book with pages smelling of ink and something metallic. Inside, he found a history of his family, a bloodline stretching back centuries. His ancestors weren't just men and women. They were something more, a lineage tied to an ancient, forgotten power. One passage made his blood run cold. The blood of the Selim is tied to the veil. To sacrifice one of the line is to open the door between realms. A child's blood is pure. A husband's blood is sacred. The sacrifice must be given willingly or taken by force. His stomach twisted. Selim, that was his mother's maiden name. His family. The next page was worse. His family tree. Dozens of names, generations stretching back, each name crossed out in deep, dark ink. Except for two. Ethan Selim, unnamed child. Ethan's breath came in short gasps as he turned the final page. The blood of the child will complete the rite. But if the child is taken from me, the husband's blood will do. His hands shook as he slammed the book shut. He looked at the closet, at the dark space beneath the floorboards. How long had she been planning this? Ethan tried to act normal, but Ophelia watched him too closely. He knew he couldn't run, not yet. So he waited. He pretended. The night of the birth arrived, and Ophelia refused to go to the hospital. "He must be born at home," she insisted. "It must be done properly." Ethan was terrified, but what could he do? Their son, Samuel, was born in candlelight, Ophelia whispering ancient words as she held him against her chest. But Ethan knew. The moment he saw her face, her unreadable expression, her glowing eyes, he knew. That night, he tried to take Samuel and flee, but the house wouldn't let him. The doors wouldn't budge. The windows showed only darkness, no outside world, just a vast, endless void. He turned to find Ophelia standing in the doorway, cradling Samuel. "You read it," she said softly. "Ophelia, please," she sighed. "I hoped you'd never know, that you'd just love me until the end." Then the shadows surged forward. Ethan fought, but it was useless. He was dragged to the center of the room, bound by invisible hands as Ophelia traced symbols in the air with her fingertips. Samuel began to cry, his wails echoing through the room. Ophelia's voice trembled, not with fear, but with something like awe. "Through blood, the gate is opened. Through sacrifice, I ascend." She turned to him, dagger in hand. "I love you, Ethan," she whispered. "But this was always meant to be." Ethan screamed. The blade fell. By morning, the house was empty. No Ethan, no Samuel, just Ophelia, standing in the ruins of their home. Her body changed. Her eyes burned like fire, her skin marked with symbols that shifted and moved. The ground beneath her pulsed with unnatural life. A doorway, ancient and hungry, had been opened, and from the abyss, something answered. The townspeople would later say they saw a woman walking into the woods that night, her bare feet leaving blackened prints in the grass. But no one followed, because the trees whispered now. And sometimes, if the wind was right, you could hear a baby crying from somewhere that was no longer of this world.